Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, I guess, for some people, depending on where you are in the world. We're delighted to present to you an outstanding group of Canadian educators that we've been able to assemble here. Neil, my friend and colleague at the bottom right-hand corner that you see on your screen right now, will be assisting in this presentation. He was kind enough to just defer to me for the start of this. It's kind of interesting as I was looking at the people that we've assembled here, almost all except two, Lori and Neil, are retired. and I didn't know, I didn't think about it at the time, but what struck me is that, you know, for years that we worked in our careers in the organizations and schools and so forth, there was always the system that prevented us sometimes from being able to do the things that we thought were the right things to do, to be able to create opportunities for creativity, for innovation, and so on. But we had these rules and regulations that always kind of bound us. And I've often said to people, you know, once you get outside of the organization, maybe it becomes easier for you to infect the actual organization. And so it's not by design, but I think it's happenstance that we have several people who have, quote, retired, but continue to work very aggressively in the world of education. And so I'm delighted to be able to introduce to you the panel here. So Neil is the person that's been helping me here. So Neil, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Ainsley, thanks for that. I have a long history as an Ainslie Rose understudy, so I find myself today once again at the feet of the master. Just an incredible people person who can bring out the best in anyone. I'm really excited about facilitating today. I've known Gabriel and Ainslie for a while. I've had the pleasure of visiting Gabriel when he was still head of a school in Buenos Aires. And I see what good he's doing now as he is in a position to infect, so to speak. So I'm looking forward to exploring the great ideas that I know that are going to come out of today. So I'll turn it back to you, Ainsley.
Thank you, Neil. So for the audience's perspective, we've put together a very simple order of speaking. We're going to start with Peter Gamwell, and then we're going to move to Jackie Scholes-Eldridge. Jordan will be third, Jordan Tinney, and then Pam Ranelli will be fourth, and we'll conclude with the work of Lori Faith in the eastern part of our country. So we don't want to take too much time from our speakers because they are gifted and talented people in their own right, and we want to take full measure and full value for the work that they bring, that they continue to engage in. And so I'm going to start with Peter, and just a very quick introduction. If we could probably take the rest of the hour here to introduce each one of these people, and then we wouldn't have any time for them to talk. So I'm going to abbreviate some of the introductions with your permission. We might have to translate for the audience for Ian, because he was born in Liverpool, England, and he has this delightful British accent that he brings with him. Ian is an author, a co-author actually, for a couple of really powerful books. The first one is called The Wonder Wall, Leading Creative Schools and Organizations in the Age of Complexity. It was published back in 2017. And his more recent version, which he was kind enough to share a proof version of with me, is called Thinker, Learner, Dreamer, Doer, Innovative Pedagogies for Cultivating Every Student's Potential. And so Peter sees himself, and he describes himself as a storyteller. He is exactly as he says. He's a storyteller. He loves to tell stories, and he does that as an adjunct professor at the University of Ottawa. He is, as is the case of all the members on our panel here, all award winners in some way, shape, or form. He's won several in his 40-year career. He has the Distinguished Leadership Award by the Ontario Public Supervisory Officers Association for working in some work that he did on leading leadership and creativity in the Ottawa Carleton School District, of which he was superintendent for a time. And in 2015, he was awarded the Global Distinguished Leadership Award by the Alberta Teachers Association, which is in the western part of our country. Peter's in the Ontario area, and Peter, the next 10 or so minutes is all yours to share with us a few of your stories, if you would, please.
Well, I better get a move on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank
I'm
you.
just going to share my screen because I am going to show a very brief video or two. Am I allowed to do this?
Yes,
Can
you
I
are.
share screen?
There you go.
There
Yeah,
we
we
go.
can see it.
Okay. Boy, I'll tell you what, preparing a 15 minutes and trying to reduce 48 years of education and then my own and teaching others turned out to be quite a challenge. So I'm going to get going. Look, what an age we live in. From the lasting impacts of COVID to increasing environmental and economic concerns, we're living in an age of complexity that's it's likely going to be with us for generations to come. How then can schools and organizations change their learning environments to foster innovative, creative thinking in students when the age of complexity is always at the forefront? How can we help our students make sense of these complexities when, in all honesty, we ourselves are struggling to make sense of any of it? I guess I'll pose one other question. Why do we need to reimagine our cultures of learning? Why is it so imperative that we do so and that we do it now? Simply put, the world has changed and continues to change in unprecedented ways and with lightning speed. But our schools and educational institutions, not to mention other organizations, haven't kept pace with this for the most part. Many reasons, but one is the tendency for bureaucracies, and I include school districts, to hold on to the status quo for dear life. And anyone who might have challenged that and attempted to implement innovative shift might have experienced that determination and that pushback. I'm going to describe now why, one of the reasons I believe that we're in this stage of what I call upside downity and how it manifests. When an organization or a system places its priorities in hierarchical order over the priorities of the individuals and groups within it, that can manifest itself in policies, procedures, learning priorities that if you didn't know better, you might think of being put in place purposefully to take the creative beauty that lies within everybody and stifle it on a daily basis. In education, I believe this manifests itself in a series of hierarchies, a hierarchy of how leadership is enacted and defined, a hierarchy of how we see creativity and who we see as creative. And in intelligence, the hierarchy of how the intelligences drive what our classrooms and systems look like. So the hierarchical foundation in terms of intelligence is something like a football league table. Mathematics and science at the top, the arts at the bottom, the other subjects sprinkled in between. And then to cement it all into place, we use time allocation. So in many jurisdictions around the world, I'll just speak for Canada, we have children spending up to 65% of their time from the age of 6 or 5 on mathematics and language, leaving precious little time for areas of their own brilliance to shine through. And this can be extremely damaging. For many of our kids, by the time they get to the end of their school career, they have a firm grasp on what we've told them they're not very good at, and not a clue about the brilliance that lies within them. I'm going to give you a little small glimpse into my own story, and you'll see why towards the end when I show you some videos of how we did manifest change. And I hope that that'll help you on your journey of making things happen. So from 2004 until my retirement in 2016, I was superintendent, responsibility for a leadership and creativity journey. It was eye-opening because the central focus of this was a journey of transformation, of reimagining how learning environments might be transformed by everyone in the system: educators, parents, students, support staff, community. And it was a true calling for me because I've always been fascinated and curious about how learning, leadership, and creativity impact on individual and organizational health, not just in schools, but across all sectors and in all types of organizations. And it became clear to me, if you can get the culture of the organization right, where formal leaders are open, they're trusting, they're non-judgmental, then people are going to respond in kind. They're going to feel comfortable to learn, to share, to innovate. And this in turn directly connects with the health and well-being of not just the individuals, but the overall organization. So through this 12-year movement, which I don't have time to describe, but it's described fully in The Wonderwall and also partly in the next book that we wrote. But it was about pulsing out the importance of opening spaces of inclusivity, opening spaces of exploration, flipping the model of learning and giving much more chance for kids to work on passion-based projects that mattered to them. Over the course of that 12 years, this had a profound impact on many, many people. I'm just going to relate one story. I could give you hundreds. The lady on the left is Rebecca Chambers. She was part of this, what we call the Lead the Way movement throughout those 12 years. And about halfway through that time, she turned the lens on herself and decided that she needed to fundamentally shift her practice. So when you went into Rebecca's, after this shift, there were no tests, there were no textbooks, there were no exams. She did two things. She opened a space of passion-based learning, but she started by having the kids reflect on their own learning. Who were they as learners, to get to know their learning styles and what mattered to them and why it mattered. And then she got them to be change makers in the community. So they all chose projects, just hundreds of different projects, all of which I've got video of now, because at the end of each semester, she had a celebration of learning in a massive space. And you could just tell by moving in there, the excitement coming out of these kids. Some of the stories are amazing. The very first time I interviewed somebody, the very first person I saw back in 2015 was this girl. I'm just going to let her speak for herself.
This is my second class with her. Okay. So for my inquiry, I did, these are two notes.
Yes.
This was from when I was in grade 6, and this was from when I was in grade 4. So my mom kept these over the years because she thought something strange was about them. So
Holy Jesus, that's beautiful.
yeah, so in grade 4, okay.
Explain these notes to me.
Yeah, so this in grade 4, I felt like I wasn't strong with any school areas, so I thought I wasn't smart. I didn't feel smart. Things I struggled with, so I'm dyslexic. I have a hard time reading, spelling, math, talking, and a few other things that I thought just clearly when I was that age, I didn't know anything about the school system, but now when I'm older and I've learned a lot more, I can tell that the school system has clearly failed me. And that Miss Chambers, I appreciate so much what she's doing because she makes me feel smart. She makes me like remember that there's different types of learning and that just book smart, sitting at a desk, writing an essay, and handing it in on time isn't the only smart there is in the world. And for a very long time, I felt not like one of the smartest kids in the class just because of that.
Fiona, that's... Wow. I can't believe that your mum did this. I want to meet your mum. And when did this one come from?
So this one was in grade 6. I felt like grade 6 is a big year. I felt like I had no friends. I didn't make the track and field team, but I'm over it now.
Wow.
I felt like I had no life, and then like again, the spelling is bad, but it says it sucks, and I like to kill me. I felt that bad about myself.
And that's just because of the experience that you had.
Yeah, and this was in grade 6. Yeah,
So when I say when a system or an organization places its priorities in hierarchical order over the individuals and groups within it, Fiona is the poster girl for that. That's exactly what we did to her. We foisted our priorities onto her, leaving her to believe she had nothing to offer. There are millions of Fionas. There are millions of them in our school systems. So the question then becomes, how do we transform this? And my co-author and I, Jane Daly, one of the things that we did, we came up with, there's a chapter in the book called Getting There as a Three-Way Street. We came with three fundamental foundational imperatives that we believe that learning organizations need to be grown on, cultivated. The first is everybody has a seed of brilliance, absolutely everybody. We need to believe that, embrace it, and act upon it. Think and act from a strength-based perspective. In the age of complexity, it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole of negativity into deficit thinking. And once an organization takes on deficit thinking, that reverberates, like sympathetic resonance. And so right through to the classroom. And this is not a blame game for educators. It's just what happens. They're feeling the pressure to focus these kids on a couple of areas of their intelligence so they can get good test results. So what they do is when the kids are getting going, oh, what's wrong with that child? There's nothing wrong with the child. There's nothing wrong. We're asking the wrong question. Step back and say, what's the magic in that child? And how can I put in place the conditions to reveal that magic? If you get those two, the first two moving through the DNA, I believe you get to the ultimate, which is the growing a culture of belonging. And I'll just briefly go to the four conditions that we've identified as supporting conditions to help make that a reality. The power of storytelling and listening. The stories that people tell reveal the essence of who they are. And I think we need to model that in everything that we do by sharing our stories, but also creating the space where people feel safe enough to share theirs. From diversity to inclusivity, the reason I say from diversity, I've worked with many, many different school districts, and when you ask them about the diversity, they point to a policy document, a procedure document, which is nonsense. That means that they don't buy into it. But if you make, if you insist on absolute inclusivity where everybody matters, there's no policy you can write for that. Thirdly, make it personal. We need to provide lots of opportunities every week for kids to be involved on things that matter to them. Because if they don't matter to them, what's the point? They're not going to learn much. They may remember it for a test, or they may not. And then celebration needs to be woven through the DNA, not a 6-week assembly where you hand out certificates to a few of the kids every single day in every single interaction. And if you'd like to learn any more about or hear any more about this, this is the, no, that's not the one. That's the wrong one. There we go. The two books are there. And we have I have a YouTube channel called Cultivating Innovation with hundreds of these videos that I've been taking for the last 10 years. And I would also, I'm looking forward to getting to hear your stories, and hopefully we can connect into the future. Thank you.
Peter, thank you so much. That was a great start for our section, and that's why you're a gifted and sought after speaker here in Canada. Thank you for sharing that. Next, folks, we have is a dear friend of mine whom I met many years ago in some work that we were doing in our school district in the same one that Neil works in the Western Quebec School Board. And I'd like to introduce you to Jackie Scholes Eldridge. Jackie is a teacher's teacher. She has worked with teachers her entire career. She has been an elementary school teacher, a teacher educator with the University of Toronto, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education that some of you might be familiar with. She's been a university administrator, a keynote speaker, and she's now an author with a wonderful book called Hearts and Minds Matter. There's so much to talk about, Jackie, but I'm going to cut her time short otherwise. So Jackie, why don't you tell us your story and talk about the innovative work that you're doing now for Canadian schools and Canadian teachers and kids, please.
Thanks, Ainsley. I just want to say I'm so honored to be part of this panel, and I feel like there was some kind of magical thing happening to put us all together that I think you'll see in a few moments when I start to talk. My relationship with Ainsley has been just so incredibly valuable, and I really consider Ainsley one of my strong mentors. So thank you, Ainsley. So I've been in the education game a long time, over 40 years, in fact. And in that time, the proverbial pendulum of education change has swung back and forth so many times that I'm shocked it hasn't flown right off its pivot into the oblivion. That said, there's one thing that is never altered, and that is the fact that most teachers do their very best to reach all children in caring and safe spaces where they are included and they know they belong as they learn to soar. For many teachers, it's in their DNA. They always wanted to be teachers and they wanted to make a difference in students' lives. Teachers like Hope Kohara and Neil Harris, my own grade 7 and grade 8 teachers who made that difference for me. They taught me 55 years ago. Okay, you can stop doing the math. I think my white hair gives my age away. While exploring the stories of my experience in my doctoral journey, I realized the powerful impact that these two incredible humans had on me. They were two of the candles that lighted my path to becoming a teacher. You see, when they taught me, I was a young adolescent growing up in a home that was far from safe. Living with an abusive father created challenges in every area of my life, including school. There were days when I had little sleep because the rage of Hurricane Dad the night before. There were other times when the fear associated with my home life was all-consuming, but that never kept me down. I was up and out of the house, racing to school to see my friends and my beloved teachers. I never missed one day of school between kindergarten and grade 8 because of teachers like Hope and Neil, who provided me with refuge from the unpredictable storms. These teachers never knew what was happening in my house, nor did I want them to, because I was so afraid that if they did, they would treat me differently. But their not knowing was of no consequence because they nurtured my mind and provided me with a school home where I felt safe for at least part of the day. Through their lessons and modeling, I learned there could be more light at the end of my often dark tunnel. They encouraged and inspired me through the ways they taught, as they showed me that the path to reach the mind is through the heart. They taught me the skills I needed to learn and to stay in school, and they gave me opportunities to be part of a nurturing community. They taught me academic content, but they also taught me to be a good global citizen. Does every teacher have that ethic of care in their DNA? I want to believe that most do, but yet I'm not sure. But perhaps the bigger questions are, does the education system have it in their collective DNA? Does it support teachers so they can reach all students with care and compassion? Even the most heart-centered teachers are challenged by oversized classes, students with a wide range of learning and emotional needs, mental health concerns, and unregulated behaviors. They're stifled by too many academic expectations that don't include or meet the needs of all children. These teachers put their heart and soul into working with students, but is it really possible for them to meet the needs of all of them when there are so many exigent factors? In my work as a teacher educator, I visit classrooms all the time. I see amazing teachers, and sadly, I see some who are not. The amazing teachers have taken the time to deeply understand their students, both academically and personally. They intentionally build inclusion by using strategies, tactics, and skills that see children working together and getting to know each other in ways that are beyond just learning together. They allow students to acquire knowledge according to their preferred ways of knowing, instead of being taught in a one-size-fits-all classroom. They use a balance of cooperative learning and independent learning because they know they have different learners in front of them. These educators push their students to think critically so they can become problem solvers and decision makers. They teach content, but they also know how to embed emotional intelligence and culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy into their curriculum. These teachers know the importance of social emotional learning and equity and diversity education, and they refuse to see these critical components as just one more thing to be added to their already full plates. With these teachers, students learn and thrive. They don't fall through the cracks. Instead, even the most challenging students develop skills that are necessary for life. They learn to be resilient. Yet the teachers who aren't able to reach their students do very few of the aforementioned methods. Instead, they rely solely on direct instruction, where the students are sitting and getting instead of applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Their classroom environments are not inclusive. Worse, they're actually places of trauma where the teacher is a ticking time bomb and the students are just waiting for the explosion. Imagine how the unpredictability of that unsafe classroom could have triggered me when I was a student, because I experienced the same volatility at home. Trauma-informed practice and brain-compatible learning research is very clear about the effects of such an environment on learning and integrating knowledge. When I visit chaotic classrooms, I observe so many students who are struggling to stay focused, manage their behavior, and self-regulate their emotion, all the while trying to fit in. It breaks my heart when I see students being bullied by other students or even by their teachers. How can a student learn to self-regulate and manage their behavior when the teacher can't? It saddens me when I watch the neurodivergent students striving to understand when there's no attempt or understanding of how to accommodate or modify them. The outcome of this scenario is that these students are often excluded, which further exacerbates the problem and sends the student the message that school is not their safe place. In the long run, a vast number of these students drop out. That's an incredible loss, since these students are gifted in ways that are not always apparent to those who are not neurodivergent. The truth is, students can't learn if they don't feel like they belong or if they feel unsafe. They will not engage if they do not feel respected or connected to what they're being taught. Likewise, teachers can't be the best teachers they can be if they're forced to make do with too many students, too few resources, innumerable curriculum expectations, and unsupportive administrators, parents, and governing bodies. Even the best teacher can be taxed to the point where they are simply holding on to a life raft instead of sailing the ship. As the African proverb teaches, it takes a village to raise a child. But what if the village people have immense challenges? What if the village is not safe or inclusive? What if the trauma that teachers and students experience comes from the village itself? So again, I ask, does the education system have an ethic of care in their collective DNA? Does it support teachers so they can teach all students with care and compassion? We all know that challenges will occur, and yet are we prepared to see the true value and importance of education, to know that education is the framework for everything that happens in life? Are we prepared to transform the system instead of simply making one more change? Are we ready to create true places of learning where all teachers have the tools, resources, and support they need to reach all students through and with their heart? One of my favorite books has always been Imagine a Day by Sarah L. Thompson. So now I want you to imagine a school system. Imagine a school system where all students know they belong, where all educators intentionally build classrooms that are safe and inclusive, where all students get the attention they need to thrive and soar so they too can make a difference in our world, where all educators know and how to reach every student in the way they learn best. Imagine a school system where all students learn emotional intelligence skills in order to be successful in life, and where all educators are themselves emotionally intelligent. Now, imagine a world where all education systems see the impact they can make when we truly believe and where we all collaborate to transform education. My children are constantly telling me I'm a schemer because I'm always planning and thinking of ways to make change. My response, I'm not a schemer. I'm a dreamer. And I can imagine a school system where everyone belongs, where everyone's needs are met and the sky is the limit in terms of learning and growing that will take place. I've seen it. I've seen it in many schools. I've seen many teachers who know how to create this environment. I know these places exist and I've seen the impact. But to truly make this happen, we need to transform our thinking away from what Peter referred to as the top-down or hierarchical approach, and to honestly look at how we can make it happen so that all of us are involved in education and all of us who are involved believe it too. We have to go from we can't to we will. And we need to do it as a village, a global village of intentional, caring educators. Thank you.
Woo-hoo. Well done.
Thank you, Jackie. One of Einstein's short quotes was, imagination is more important than intelligence. I hope that's true. And leaving us with imagination ... is a good way to end off. I have the privilege of introducing Mr. Jordan Tinney. As a K-11 principal myself, I understand the critical importance of what Michael Fulham would call the moral imperative. Generative leadership defines the quality of educational change. Jordan now will explain to us how to translate that into quality learning for all children.
Well, thanks very much. Appreciate the introduction, and thank you, Jackie and Peter, for your inspirational talks, and Ainsley for the invitation, and now knowing that we're neighbors.
Yeah, about
I'm
that.
going to talk, about actually the leadership we need. Hearing Jackie and Peter talk, we care so deeply about empowering teachers to create engaging learning environments for all children, where all children belong. And I've been wondering about what type of leadership do we need to get there as a system. I want to start by acknowledging that I reside and work and learn on the traditional unceded territory of the Okanagan Syilx people. And I want to recognize and honor and respect the presence of Indigenous people, past, present, and future, on these beautiful lands. And so with that, I want to take us back to a time before the pandemic. And at the time, we had the OECD come to Vancouver. They were launching their Education 2030 project, and we were looking at, what do we need in leadership? And when I say leadership, I mean leadership from the classroom all the way to system leaders, leadership from wherever you stand in the system. The topics at the time were about preparing students for rapidly changing future, literacy, numeracy, of course, social emotional learning, being adaptive, reflective, accountability, and alignment. And if you looked at the journals of the day, you pulled out the educational themes, you'd find things like cultures of coaching, making schools safe, and technology, the quality of the teaching profession, local and state, balance and authority, and social emotional learning, and of course, literacy and numeracy. But if you fast forward to 2022 and you do that same scan, you get themes like mental health, racial equity, family and community partnerships, morale, and the changing narrative in the teacher profession, self-directed learning for adults, and leading through complexity and change. And so, of course, we all know what caused those shifts. Well, in 2019-20, I don't think any of us had any real idea of what was on the horizon for us in education, for our children, and for our society. But if you look back again, it was education in evolution in 2019, critical thinking, creativity, and you've heard the other themes. And then we went through this period of enormous disruption, even gaps in the system where students weren't at school at all in the normal ways we know. And as we started to emerge, as we continue to emerge from the pandemic, I think there was an expectation or belief that we would pick up right where we left off, wherever that was. And yet when we started to gather, it was clear that we weren't right where we left off. We didn't know whether we lost a step, or through some of the innovations and amazing things we saw that we gained a step. and how could we adequately look by and identify the true impact on all those adults and children in our system? And, even if we did the analysis, does it really matter? The reality is, where are we now, and how do we rebuild and reimagine a future that looks bright for all children? So in BC and across Canada, we started to, many different places are looking at reimagining leadership. What does that leadership look like that is going to take us to the future we need, and looking explicitly at competencies? And for too long, the competencies or descriptors of leadership have read like a checklist of things that people need to do. And I've often felt that these checklists completely lose the essence. Just as subjects don't make a whole child, a checklist of leadership attributes does not get at the qualities and attributes of the leadership we need, whether that be the teacher or the system leader. So in BC, we re-examined the competencies, and hand in glove with Indigenous leaders, we rewrote these competencies over the last really 18 months to describe the future that we want. And of course, that future begins with children at the center, and having children as stewards of their future, because we believe that a quality education must foster a future in which children feel confident and secure, not only in their sense of belonging and identity and where they are with their learning, but in their relationships with others and with the environment. And that districts and jurisdictions should, in other words, teach about how to enact a more just and sustainable society. And so our eternal purpose is to embrace the challenges ahead and have the courage to create the future that is just and sustainable. And we also want cultures of curiosity and inquiry as a lived daily practice and mindset. And with inquiry, we know come the collaborative processes and participation in reflective practice that is the heart of the work of great teachers and leaders. And inquiry itself is also about demonstrating honesty in reflection and unearthing the truth about what you know and the steps we should be taking to get there. And at the same time, we have to grow the capacity of ourselves and of others. A system, as others have talked about, is only as strong as the people within. So across organizations, people need to be supported, cared for, nurtured, not only as individuals, but as leaders who influence, affirm, and nurture those around them. The collaborative and action-oriented processes of inquiry, they're really part of an intentional professional learning plan that builds on the strengths of all. And leaders have to demonstrate integrity and humility as they continually work to act selflessly in service of others. And those qualities always would include an ongoing examination of yourself, your own leadership style and practices, and your intentional commitment to be a role model as a lifelong learner. And of course, all learning unfolds in context, and you have to develop high levels of contextual literacy around both internal systems and external systems, your school and your community and the surrounding environment. You need to learn to speak the language of networks and systems and watch the way they interact, because we are shaped by and we shape the systems and relationships that surround us. And leaders respect and acknowledge that incredible power of culture and context and the balance that is needed in the knowledge presented. Leaders read the land of organizations within and nurture healthy, transparent, and inclusive cultures. And finally, you have to align the structures for those visions, the vision you have for learning, because cultures of inquiry and curiosity need to be supported intentionally. And strong leaders are not able only to articulate and facilitate a bold vision, but they're able to align those systems. And leaders have to have the wisdom to identify, connect, and alter systems and structures, sometimes challenging them and break them to focus the efforts and resources where it really is most needed. You have to be keen observers, careful communicators, and leaders are points of connection and active constructors of systems that align and support. So in the end, again, whether that's from teachers to system leaders, you empower children to be stewards of their learning and their future and caregivers of their identity. And you foster cultures of curiosity, inquiry, and innovation. And you support and grow yourselves and all those around you. And you lead in ways that support in your context. And you align your structures and efforts towards that vision. And as you work towards that, on your leadership journey, what exactly motivates you? And we would turn back to the good old work of Daniel Pink, says, what motivates you? You know, you want to be able to choose some things in your life. You want autonomy, which door to open, which task to tackle, no different from children. You want to have some agency in your work and some sense of control, some sense to be able to shape your destiny. You want to be a master at your skill. You want to be able to refine the skills that you have and to be rewarded by crafting highly engaging collaborative endeavors to feel a sense of growth and learning. And so that would be the mastery part. And then, of course, purpose. You want to be connected to something larger than yourself and your school. You want to have a sense of pride that in the moral purpose of your work. And so what do people want to see in leadership? They want to see who you actually are. And what are they looking for? Well, you can never lead, of course, if people won't follow. And leadership isn't about power. It's about influence. It's about relationships. And that influence flows from the personal qualities you have, qualities such as courage, wisdom, honesty, integrity, humility, respect, balance. These mirror the Anishinaabe 7 grandfather teachings of wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, and truth. So with clear homage to Simon Sinek, people don't follow because of what you do. They follow because of who you are. And to know that you are on this journey of struggles with them. So it's really over to us from an awareness of our own skills and abilities and qualities and the context and the complexity. So from an awareness to an engagement with those who are along the journey with you, and then to a responsibility to create equitable learning opportunities for all children. Because as others said, it's our responsibility to tell and shape the narrative we want. And that narrative is about our collective leadership toward the future we need. Then, you know, we can tell a story of gloom and doom and endless challenges, or we can tell a story of hope and optimism and the collective goodwill. So the choice is in our hands. So thanks very much.
That's great, Jordan. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. You can see why now that Dr. Jordan Tinney was an award-winning educator, one of the largest school districts in Canada, and Surrey School District, from which he retired recently and has moved to the same city in which I live. We discovered that when we were in communication to organize this event. So Jordan, thank you so much. Your voice and the work that you do has been celebrated in many ways, and there's no doubt that it isn't warranted. So thank you for your presentation. We turn now to a new friend of mine, I must say, that I've had the occasion to meet as we've been getting up to planning this event. I'd like to introduce you to Pam Rinaldi. Pam, like the others, has been a lifelong educator, over 40 years in public education, K-12 public education. Like many of us, she's been a classroom teacher. But what distinguishes her is that she's been an itinerant teacher who are blind and visually impaired. And that led her to becoming at one point the director of learning, inclusive learning, and an assistant superintendent of learning in our province of Alberta, which is a Western province we like to refer to. And then she retired recently from being superintendent of Foothills School Division. And I know a little bit about Foothills because of the work, some of the work that I have been doing in Alberta. And I guess our paths were intended to cross at some point. And so Pam is now working in the EdCan network, which she might tell you some more about, but I'll just read the first sentence of her description of what she wants to share with us. Education is the catalyst to the world and the future for our children. So we look forward to hearing from Pam and the work that she's doing for education in Canada.
Thank you, Ainsley. I'm so honored to be here. I do want to acknowledge that today I am on Treaty 7 land, and that is the traditional land of the Blackfoot, Cree, Tucina, Kainai, Piikani, and Stoney Nakoda people. But I'm really humbled to be here today. I thought, how did I get on this panel? I thought maybe Ainsley clicked on my profile by mistake and he was too far down the line to take it back. But I am so excited to be here today and hearing you all. I think it really connects with some of the work that I've been doing especially over the last year. So hopefully it certainly sparked my thinking, and hopefully I can spark some of yours today, and we can continue to connect after this because I see such alignment in a lot of the work we're doing. It's been never more critical than now, given the complexity of today's world, that we need to advocate for change and improvement in our education system. The future of our children, and in fact, society depends on it. And I really hope that I spark some thought today on supporting the educators and staff that show up for our kids and students every day in our schools and classrooms. First, I want to tell you a story about my niece, Kathleen. Kathleen always wanted to be a teacher. She studied very hard to get into an education program. She worked summers, couple of jobs. She incurred big student loans. So she was so excited when she completed her education program, got her first contract in classroom. Now, granted, she started working during COVID, started teaching during COVID, and we know how challenging that was for experienced educators, let alone new educators to the profession. So I was really, by all accounts, she was a great teacher, connected with kids, really worked hard at engaging learning for her students. So I was really shocked this summer when I sat down with her and she said, "I'm not going back. In fact, I'm going to lobster fish." So this is a kid who's not afraid of hard work. If you can get up at 4 a.m. and go out to sea and fish lobsters, you're not afraid of working hard. And so I was like, why? Well, like, what gives? She said, "I just was not psychologically prepared for the toll it took on me." And she said, "I just didn't feel like there were systems of support there for me." So unfortunately, our story is not unique. I think teachers, both new and experienced, have that thought. Can they stay in this profession? And since my retirement, I've been working with the EdCan network, which many of you know is a pan-Canadian bipartisan network that connects provincial systems of education across our country. And really our role is we conduct a lot of research and create a lot of resources and disseminate those resources for people to use. I'm part of the Well at Work group, advisor group, and we work with school districts to help them to assess their present state of staff wellness and well-being. And then I act as a bit of a coach and a critical friend to help design action plans so that they can move the needle forward on staff well-being and wellness. The pandemic has impacted us all in so many ways, 10 pounds plus, many of us. But it has shown the inequities in our society and our social systems, and no more than that profound effect on schools and learning communities. We know that many of our Canadian youth are struggling with mental health, and our studies suggest that those numbers are even higher post-pandemic. What about the teachers and the staff that support them? Are they all right? Promoting educator well-being is important for preventing burnout, but if we want students to be well, and as Jackie and spoke to as well, we need the teachers to be well. We need to ensure that educators, administrators, and all staff are supported. Stress is contagious, and research has shown that if educator stress can be reflected in the neurobiological markers of stress among students. It's difficult for educators to model and promote well-being and social emotional competencies if they're struggling with that themselves. We've been working with districts across mostly Western Canada. We've, I think, done one in the East, but as we build our group of advisors, we're hoping to do more cross-Canada research. And some of the evidence that we're seeing with the data we're collecting in themes, and what we do is we look at HR data, we do staff surveys, and then we do interviews with key staffing groups, teachers, administrators, EAs, bus drivers, caretakers within the system, to ask them some specific questions around well-being, what's supporting their well-being, what's getting in the way of their well-being. So we're gathering some really rich data. And I don't think you'll be surprised when you hear what some of the themes we're seeing are. Certainly school and school districts are struggling. The biggest issues we're hearing are about burnout, workload issues, and that work-life balance. and the feeling of exhaustion. One school district recently shared with us that they did a survey with their staff at end of August. You know, you're ready to start school, all excited. On a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling? What's your level of excitement this year? And it came out as a 3 average. That's really worrisome. Principals in particular are feeling the squeeze. They're getting chopped down. You know, they're feeling that from districts and then parents and teachers in the middle. So principals in particular are feeling the squeeze. Educators are feeling isolated. And I think a previous speaker spoke so eloquently to this. They want connection. They want connection to become a priority, and that's connection with their students, connections with their colleagues, and connections with their leaders. And that's at the school and district level. I think Peter spoke about that hierarchical, try to flatten the hierarchy. Teachers are asking for that. They're feeling really isolated. They want environments where they feel trusted, valued, included, and have that sense of belonging. And they also talked a lot about communication, and communication being a two-way street. Oftentimes teachers feel like they're getting things told to them or information shared with them, and then they don't see those open channels of how can they have input into the changes and the implementations, ideas and initiatives, way to provide feedback on what's the impact on their students. And how are those decisions being made? They also talked about the pace of change, and change needs to be manageable. We need to go back to we need to go back to the way we always did things? Is this an opportunity to really revisit what's important in learning and teaching and really put our focus and our attention there? And how do we ensure that well-being for educators as well as kids becomes embedded into our strategies, our policies, our procedures? It becomes just the way we do things. The other thing that people are really looking for are leaders, and leaders who can foster the culture of well-being, of many of the things that Jordan talked about, that walk the talk, that are authentic, that they know they can be supported. So the districts we've been working with are really dedicated to improving those conditions for their staff, but oftentimes it's really difficult to know where to start. We see lots of resources being focused on the individual, mental health support for staff and their families, resources on eating well, exercise, stress reduction. That's all really important, but alone it's not going to move us forward. Word of advice, don't buy your staff another stress ball. They don't appreciate that, and you might get it in a place you don't want it to be. So we need to start seeing well-being as a shared responsibility. Absolutely, as individuals, we have responsibility for our own well-being. That goes without saying. But our well-being also depends on how collaboratively we work together in schools and teams. Are we investing in learning communities? Are we giving teachers the time, resources, and skills to creatively and constructively learn and create together? Are our schools psychologically safe for all? We also need to look at systemic change. Are we listening to the voice of our staff, of our educators? Are we putting a priority on building relationships? Are we developing policies that support wellness, diversity, and belonging? And when I say develop policies, I don't mean just develop the policy, but live the policy. Are we considering the pace of change? As Peter DeWitt calls it, I think he reflected on post-pandemic called de-implementing. Is it time to revisit all those initiatives, things that we did that it seemed like a good idea at the time, but didn't really result in the impact we wanted to see in classrooms, learning for kids along the way? It's time to go deeper, not wider, more authentic learning. I wish I could tell you there was a magic bullet for this. I could point you into the program that would support this change, but this is really hard work. It takes dedication, lots of tough conversations, reflection, and time. I do think that if we start to look at well-being through that three-piece lens, if you will, the individual, collaborative, and systemic, I think we'll really start to move this needle forward. But most importantly, we need to start the conversation and continue to make it a priority. We're hoping that by the end of this year, we may have more data from the districts that we worked with and are able to measure the impact of what the different strategies, actions, or lived experience had on improving educator well-being, and that will be really exciting. Schools and school districts are engaging in that learning together because kids are worth it. And we need the Kathleen's of the profession to stay and grow and ensure that our education future is bright. Too much depends on it. If you want to learn more about what EdCan's doing, we're having a Pan-Canadian Summit in Edmonton in November, focused on educator well-being. We have lots of resources on the www.k12wellatwork.ca website, including a free online course on leadership and well-being. So thanks again. I'm so excited to be part of this work and learning from all of you. And I challenge us to keep this conversation going. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Neil?
Yes, so we will finish off with our last presentation. It will go past 3 p.m. Eastern somewhat. I am extremely excited to introduce Laurie Faith. Laurie will frame for us the general theoreticals that underpin, quote, socially shared learning regulation. Hopefully, she will encourage us to, quote, rip a hole through the fabric of our everyday habits and consider some, quote, cool ideas and strats that foster self-regulation in learners. I turn the floor over to you, Laurie.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for including me in this incredible conversation today. What you have achieved in organizing this is astounding. So thank you. I'm reflecting on all of my colleagues and what they said and thinking that I love the idea of being mostly a dreamer and not so much a schemer, but I think I'm a schemer. I'm going to bring you today maybe a way to live the policy of this transactive, agentic, very well community-oriented, metacognitive goal that we have for education that's been so beautifully articulated by all of you today. So this is going to be a bit of a scheming kind of talk, and we're going to get down to some real practical stuff here. So I'm blessed by this gift of 12 minutes, and I hope my comments will fit neatly and squarely into these 12 minutes that I have. So I am not here to talk about a specific curriculum, actually, but rather the sort of general discombobulation that we're seeing at school, particularly kind of following COVID, but that we've always seen. Things like disorganization, inattention, distraction, impulsivity, inflexibility. I imagine any educator listening is sort of giving a hallelujah right now. This is kind of where we are, and it's really hard to do all of this empowering work with children when we feel like they're just not available, and we want to bring them back in. So we all know that this kind of discombobulation is associated with ADHD. But that most of our students following COVID are kind of sliding further towards these qualities. And oh, what a time we're having in education right now. It's overwhelming for teachers. We've talked a lot about teacher mental health and wellness. It's also quite impairing for students. So even before COVID, it was estimated that 50% of all the variation in school performance was due to this discombobulation. Over and above language and reading and IQ. So if we want to move students towards their academic goals, we have to pay attention to this. So when I talk about discombobulation, what I'm really talking about are executive functions. These are the cognitive functions of the prefrontal cortex that help us to perform goal-directed, intentional activity, all the work that we're proud of, that we want to do, that feels agentic and empowering. So anytime we're operating outside of habit or routine, we're using EFs. which is to say that EFs are essential for all learning and growth, improvement, and success. So think about your most successful friend. I bet you they are very organized and that maybe they have one or two very strong EFs. So who are we talking about here? How prevalent is this challenge in our schools? Really, kids with ADHD tend to have weaker EFs, true enough, but so also do students with LDs, autism, lack of sleep, a concussion, sadness, loneliness, boredom, a sense of exclusion, hunger, or even just a cold. I ask you, do you have perfect EFs? The truth is that we all struggle to apply ourselves with full attention, organization, flexibility, planning, self-control. We all struggle. Do you ask this panel, do you struggle with all of these things from time to time? Raise your hand. I can tell you probably we all do. I know I do.
Both hands.
Yeah, both hands. It's true. And so really, as we're trying to do all this great connecting work with children, this is a lot of what's getting in our way, is just teachers sense that they're not able to get anything off the ground. The remedy, for some people with ADHD, as one example, meds are a big help, but they're not for everyone. And pills don't teach skills. Alternatively, and in addition to pills, there is broad consensus that early training in self-awareness and strategy use is the remedy that helps everyone, whether they're on meds or not, whether they have ADHD or not. Every person in every room, including this one, would do better with self-awareness and a focus on strategy. So there's also broad consensus among teachers that going around a classroom teaching one-to-one self-awareness and skills is not feasible. There's broad consensus by school funding authorities that providing one-to-one tier 3 support for every single student who struggles is also not feasible, appropriate, or at all affordable. And also there's pretty broad consensus among kids that honestly, don't knock yourself out, adults, because we'd rather not be singled out anyways. So that's why we're so discombobulated at school, because actually everyone knows we need to talk to kids more about strategy use, engage their autonomy and their agency, but we can really only envision an expensive and time-consuming one-to-one approach. So can this massive social investment called school do nothing to support or rather ease this discombobulation? Is it pills or nothing for our students? Or is it only the students with parents who have the wherewithal to teach skills that get to be successful? No, that can't be the answer. So here's the big idea that I've come here with today. We need to embrace the idea of socially shared learning regulation at school. And it meets so many of the goals that you've articulated here today. We need to show teachers how to respond to discombobulated students, not by clamping down, reducing their expectations, or getting frustrated at the lack of one-to-one resources. But, and this is going to sound ridiculously simple, when students are discombobulated, we need to call the whole group together and say, hey, everyone, we're in this together. What's hard about this for us right now? And what strategies might we use to be successful? And then teachers need to listen up, learn, be curious, be delighted, be validating, be autonomy supportive, and let the students thrive in this culture that we all dream of self-awareness, empowerment, agency, autonomy, and strategy. We need to let our students see that their friends also struggle with certain things. We need to let them explore their friends' strategies and let their friends explore theirs. This is where motivation grows, with autonomy, a sense that I am competent and skilled as a strategizer, and that a sense of belonging in a community that really listens and knows me. So this is a really simple protocol, and I'm very focused on implementation. How can we actually do something that will actually make a difference? This is a protocol that can be repeated throughout the school day. So on the playground, students fighting over soccer rules, let's say. We can blow the whistle, and instead of canceling the game or prescribing exactly how they'll play it, we can call them all together and say, hey, everyone, you're having a hard time here, but I know you can solve this problem together. I believe in you. What's hard about this activity for you? We might hear diverse and really unexpected answers like, Joe never passes to me, and one goal is bigger than the other goal and it's driving me crazy, or there are too many players and it's overwhelming. Then we might ask, okay, well, what makes sense? All of this that you're telling me makes perfect sense. That's really, really hard. That's hard. So what kind of strategies can we use to succeed? I really believe in you. Let's talk strategy here. And we might hear things like, hey, I don't know, let's play in shifts, or, I'm sorry, I'll pass to you, or let's just go ahead and fix those darn nets. I'll take off my sweater and we'll make that a goalpost. And these are the kinds of strategies that students can come up with on their own. This approach can also be done throughout the day in the classroom. So, we're supposed to be writing about a historical event, let's say, but nobody's doing it. Classic. Instead of teachers rolling up their sleeves and wading in and reducing expectations, or looking for one-to-one remediation for certain students and getting really frustrated that it's not available, we can say, hold on, everybody, let's talk. You're having a really hard time with this, and I know you can do it. I know we can figure this out together. Let's problem solve. What are our barriers to this writing task? Let's figure them out as a team. We might hear things like, I know my idea, I just can't start, or I forget the name of that thing you were talking about, and I don't want to start until I know the name. I missed the instructions and I was embarrassed to admit it, so that's why I didn't start. And so all of these things sound so familiar, natural, and normal to me. And then we can say, great, I'm learning as much about us as a class, and so much about us as a class, and I completely understand that that's the kind of thing that sometimes stops me too. So when I have to write something, all those same challenges, I'm faced with all those same challenges. We can say, I know there's someone in here with a great strategy idea who can help get us past this. One of those faces that I'm looking out at in this room has got it. And I want you to share it with us now. And then we might hear things like, well, I kind of like to talk to friends to get my ideas going. And that's probably bad behavior, but I do like to talk. Or, can I hear the instructions again just one more time? Or could you write them down on the board? Or, we could give students a text to help them with all those words that they've forgotten. So the strategies just kind of flow in this conversation. And we didn't need an educational assistant to take one or two students down the hall to achieve this. And we didn't need to give the students a sentence starter or a fill in the blank or reduce it from a page to a paragraph. Instead, we took on wisdom about our students as learners. We shared and they shared, and we came into closer relationship and connection. That feels good. That's the opposite of burnout. We delivered the self-awareness and skill development that has been proven to help. And we kept the students together in the same room, like a team, like friends, like community, where everyone belongs and everyone can help each other in some cool way with some cool strats. So this is my big idea: socially shared learning regulation and the barriers and strategies protocol. Just a neat little protocol. We can rip open our day. Anyone can do it. It's like jabbing an EpiPen into your arm. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to ask 2 questions. You can find my book that provides differentiated guidance and examples and classroom artifacts and research and science. It's called Executive Function Skills in the Classroom. I co-wrote it with Peg Dawson, who's a pretty well-established EF expert, as well as Carol Ann Bush, who's an experienced educator. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to share this schemy, tactical, on the ground idea for how we could move our vision and our dreams forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lori. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think, thank you, Neil and Lori as well. It seems to me that Canadian education is in good hands if we have people like you that are doing the thinking for people that are still working in schools. So, your contribution is exemplary. And I'm really pleased and proud of who you are and what you do. So thank you for joining us for this session, and for Gabrielle for giving us the platform and the opportunity. This is clearly something that the entire world needs to be talking about. And in fact, you've made that happen. So thank you.
Thanks, Ainsley. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, everybody. We're very happy to have you as the second to last event. We only have one more segment remaining in Hawaii, and then we'll be ready to wrap up our day. As I've said to everybody, what really matters is tomorrow, not today. No, and we not only hope to highlight and showcase your work, your message, your projects, all that you've said, but also to provide a network for many of us all over the world who are trying to transform education to be together and to reinforce our convictions, to mutually motivate ourselves and to carry on, because it is hard. So thank you very much. It's been a wonderful session. Thank you.